Hey everybody, this is Matt, and in today's video I have for you a Labrynth Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel Master 1 deck profile. That's right, folks. People have been asking about this deck list all month long. I talked about it in my last video why it took me so long, because of all the Yu-Gi-Oh! And changes and new cards and all this stuff that's been coming out in the month of March. It's taken me several iterations to finally arrive on the list that I felt most happy with, right? Yes, this does include a transaction rollback. This does include Arias the Labyrnth Butler. In my last Adventures video, I do have some gameplay with all those cards. So yeah, I'm going to get into the deck list now. Before anyone asks about the Ryan Yu deck list that got first place in the Duelist Cup, I address that in the introduction of my last Adventures video. If you want to play Labyrinth with hand traps, go ahead. It's not a horrible build. Like, obviously, hand traps are good against combo decks and most meta decks, hence why most combo and meta decks play that against each other. Obviously, it's effective, right? But this is not how I like to play Yu-Gi-Oh! This is not how I like to play Labyrinth. I think that style of play is boring, right? I think hand traps are boring. So yeah, this is a trap card heavy build for Labyrinth. Obviously, we're gonna have fewer trap cards than previous deck profile videos that I posted, and that's mainly because in order to incorporate some of the new Labyrinth support, Arias, for example, right, or even like the transaction rollback, we are playing furniture cards. So yeah, so let's get into that. So just like most of my Labyrinth deck profile videos or deck profiles, let's start with the core, the Labrynth Core. So the core of this deck, we are playing 2 copies of Ariana, not 3. I hate seeing 2 of these cards in my opening hand, especially when going second. Few things suck more than seeing that second Ariana in your hand. Like the idea behind this deck, and where you're going to see a lot of 2-of ratios today, even some like a lot of 1-ofs, is because we're playing a trap heavy version, right? Again, the philosophy behind how I like to play Labyrinth, which is like a back row trap deck, control deck, right? Unlike a combo deck, so in a combo deck, right, you max out the ratios on everything because you want to see your 1-card combo. It doesn't even matter if you see like all 3 of the card in your hand, because as long as you see 1 copy, right? So you want to maximize how often you see your combo starter, because your end board is directly dependent on it, right? So if you don't see your 1-card starter, you don't get your end board. You don't actually set up any plays on your opponent your opponent's turn or follow plays to win the game, right? But in this version, we are not a combo deck, right? We're not even a mid-range deck. We are a back row control deck, trap deck, right? So our end board is as good as our opening hand. So whatever our opening hand is, that's our end board, right? It's that simple. We're not comboing. We're not doing crazy plays to create a board. Our hand is our board. So a lot of these cards are once per turn, right? Which like card once per turn, which means if you open all 3 copies of a card, let's say for example Dogmatic Punishment, you essentially open that's 2, like, so you have a 5-card opening hand, right? Let's say 3 of those cards are Dogmatic Punishment. That means that because you can only use 1 of them on your opponent's turn, right, you effectively have 2 fewer interruptions, right? So we don't want to see duplicates on our hand because of that. So we do play a lot of 2-ofs. 2-of is a ratio of, I want to see this in my hand sometimes, but I really don't want to see 2 in my hand, right? 3 is like, I don't care, I just get it in my hand no matter what. Even if there's more than 1 copy, just get into my hand, right? That's the theory behind having a 2-of, a 3-of of something. But we play 2-of because, yeah, we want to see that card often, but we don't want to see more than 1. The logic here. So I play 2 Ariana because I don't want to see more than 1 of her in my opening hand. In fact, I might not want to see her in my opening hand at all, right? Sometimes, depending on the situation. 2 is all you need. I don't think you can cut her to 1. I've tried cutting her to 1 at some point. The main reason being is because, oftentimes she might just get banished off like a Mirror Jade or something. But she's having that second one available, especially in your deck, is very powerful because you can welcome into an Ariana, and Ariana can search your Coup Clock, and Coup Clock can give you a new interruption immediately, in theory, right? So you definitely want to have that second copy available to you. We are playing 2 copies of Lady. Some players cut Lady down to 1. I disagree with that. I don't think she's worth cutting down to 1 yet, because there's plenty of ways to, one of her gets banished, especially if you're in a Brandon matchup. It's almost always okay to sacrifice a lady to a Mirror Jade banish, and it's okay because you have a second lady, right? But yeah, you want that second lady, because again, sometimes you want to see her in your opening hand. You don't want to see her, more than once, right? You don't want to see more than one copy in your opening hand. And she's like your main boss monster in the sense of like she's, the strongest monster in your deck, right? So 3,000 attack. Her effects, while you control a set card that includes monsters, your opponent cannot target or destroy her with card effects. So she has that level layer of protection. So Snake Eyes cannot put her in your back row, right? Which is the most annoying part. So yeah, sometimes you just bring out two ladies against a Snake Eyes, right? Cashier Fenrir cannot banish her, right? If you have set cards. So yeah, a lot of times Fenrir can just out some of your stuff. Fenrir can out Lovely. You don't. Yeah, so having two of her, I think, is very important, especially if you're under a Floodgate lock, right? Or you're against like a Runic deck, for example. A lot of Runic cards they have to target or they destroy. Yeah, they can't really interact with her. Yeah, so if a Labrynth card was activated or a trap card was activated on this turn, you can quick effect special summon her from your hand in defense position. And then her final effect is that whenever either player activates a normal trap card, her quick effect is you can chain her to the activation of a normal trap card to set another normal trap card from your deck of a different name, right? So this helps you generate advantage, right? So if you have her on the field, you use a trap card, you can chain her, assuming your opponent doesn't interrupt, of course, and then you can set another trap card from your deck of a different name. So that's how you get a lot of plus off of her as an engine piece. So yeah, two lady. And then of course we want one copy of Lovely. Lovely is kind of like, so if Lady generates card advantage by searching trap cards from the deck, Lovely generates card advantage by recycling trap cards from the graveyard. So Lovely is very powerful, but she's also weaker in terms of like she doesn't have the targeting and destruction protection that Lady has. So she can be outed much more easily. She can even be impermed, whereas Lady cannot be impermed most of the time, right? Same with Valid. Also, she has no way of summoning herself, so she's a gigantic brick. So we play her at 1 because we never want to see her in our opening hand. But of course, a lot of Labyrinth players will tell you like, oh, even though she's a 1/of, she still somehow always makes her way into that opening hand, right? So she's just as bricky in the graveyard as in the hand. So yeah, she's also good discard fodder for other cards that we have for our furniture pieces, etc. So her 3 effects. She also has 3 effects. One, which is the first one, which is highly underrated, is while she's on the field, your opponent cannot chain monster effects to your trap card effects, which means that if they make a Baronne de Fleur, you can, for example, activate Dogmatica Punishment to destroy Baronne, and Baronne cannot negate that because Lovely says that monster effects cannot be chained to your trap effects. So she's very good. She also protects your welcomes from ashes and other hand traps, right? So she's on the field and you use a welcome or big welcome, they cannot ash you, period. So highly underrated effect. A lot of people overlook this effect because her other 2 effects are more noteworthy. The other 2 effects says that, once per turn, as a slow effect, target the normal trap in your graveyard, set it to your field, but cannot activate unless you have a fiend monster, which most of the time you will. Like, I almost never came into a situation where I didn't have a fiend monster and I couldn't activate it. So yeah, you're going to be able to use it. And then her 3rd effect is when another monster leaves the field by normal trap effect, you can destroy a card in your opponent's hand at random or on their field, in which case you choose, but it's non-targeting. So she gets to pop cards once per turn. She's very powerful. Having Lovely and Lady on your field can generate, like, if you have the 2 set up and like 1 or 2 normal traps, like, you just have insane advantage and playmaking ability where your opponent can't do much against you. So yeah, one of Lovely, who's your, I guess, secondary boss monster. You don't care about losing a Lady as much as you care about losing a Lovely. Most of your time, your opponent will try to take out your Lovely if they can with like a Fenrir or Snake Eyes Flamberge, right? All right, let's talk about your other supporting Labyrinth monster cards. We're running 1 Kuklok, 1 Stove, 1 Shindrag Lear. We're only 1 of each. I was previously against playing the furniture cards, as many of you may know. This is the first deck list that I've put out for Master Duel, which includes any of these 3 cards. The main reason we are playing the furniture now is because Transaction Rollback is a card that came out recently, and it's one of the most insanely cracked, amazing cards, trap cards that they ever made. Unfortunately, you need that card most of the time in your graveyard, and the best way to get into your graveyard, in the case of Labrynth, is like the furniture cards, right? So your furniture cards are searchable. They're searchable off Ariana. They're searchable off Welcome. They're searchable off Big Welcome. So let's go over their abilities real quick. Stove Torby says, send this card from your field or hand and discard a card as cost to set a Labrynth normal spell trap from your deck to your field. And then when a monster leaves the field by normal trap effect, you can special this card from your graveyard. This is a level 2. And then Chandraglier is similar in that you can set it from field or graveyard, set a card, except when this is in the graveyard, if a monster leaves the field by normal trap effect, you return this to your hand, not the field. And this is a level 3. So Stove is better than Chandraglier. Because because your Stove being level 2 and your Ladies and Lovely being level 8, you can make Chaos Angel with them, right? You cannot make Chaos Angel with Chandraglier. So why not just play 2 Stove? Because Stove is once per turn, right? Or sometimes you open both of these furnitures and you just want to be able to use one effect or the other. Another reason is because sometimes you want to have a card on in your hand versus on the field. So, for example, let's say you go into a Muckraker play. You need a card to discard. You need discard fodder for Muckraker, right? So sometimes if you earlier on brought back a Chandraglier to your hand instead of onto the field like Stove, then you have a card in hand, and that can be useful sometimes to have the card on the hand instead of the field. Sometimes you don't want to put a card on in the field. Why? For example, let's say you're against Snake Eyes and they have their field spell Divine Temple of Snake Eyes, right? Whenever you summon a monster to the field, their temple triggers and they summon a monster from their back row to their field, right? So if you're trying to play around Temple, or you're trying to play around Promethean Princess, right? You actually prefer to have the Chandraglier over Stove, right? So yeah, they're not. So even though Stove is in a vacuum better, based on like formats and certain matchups, sometimes you actually prefer to have the Chandraglier because you rather have it recycled to your hand rather to the field, right? And if you open both of them, they're both playable. Whereas if you open two Stove, like they're not both playable on the same turn. So yeah, so 1 of each. I originally started playing with 2 of each, and I realized that I was seeing too many of these, and I'd rather just cut it down to 1. Again, Ariana can search all these cards. Every other Labrynth card you see here, Ariana can search. So if you have a transaction rollback in your hand, Ariana you can normal Ariana search a furniture, for example. So, or you can welcome or big welcome into a furniture. That's fine. And then we play the clock. The clock has pretty good synergy with the furniture. So clock has 2 effects. Quick effect: discard this card, and then you can activate one normal trap that will set this turn if you control a Labrynth monster. If a card from your hand is sent to the graveyard, activate your normal trap card or your Labrynth card effect, except Coup Clock. While this is in the graveyard, you can add this card to your hand or special summon it. So the combo is, let's say you open Coup Clock and a furniture. You send Coup Clock to the graveyard first, and then you send a furniture to the graveyard using this effect. You set a big welcome from your deck. New chain clock can trigger its graveyard effect to return and summon itself to the field. So then you have a Labrynth monster on the field. You can now use the big welcome you just set, and now you can big welcome, bring out Lovely, bounce the clock back into your hand, and then Lovely can pop a card in your opponent's hand. And then clock is now available on the subsequent turn to make a follow-up play where you can activate a trap card the turn it was set. So yeah, Coup Clock can come in very clutch, especially when let's say you have a lady, right? And it's your opponent's turn. They're doing some stuff. You can theoretically, use lady to search a trap card. Let's say you use a big welcome, right? You can chain lady to big welcome. Search whatever trap card you need that the current matchup or situation calls for. Let's say you need a D barrier. Let's say you need an Ice Dragon's Prison. Let's say you need a Karma Cannon, right? And then your big welcome resolves. You actually summon clock and bounce clock back into your hand, and then immediately use clock from your hand. So now the trap card that you set off lady is live immediately. So yeah, Coup Clock can actually, a lot of times people want to big welcome into Lovely to get a pop, but sometimes you just need the clock just to get that trap card activated. Obviously, Coup Clock can be kind of bricky in your opening hand, especially going second. But there's some interesting plays that you can do with Coup Clock. if you go watch my Adventures FC series, with Ku Klok, you could theoretically trap trick into evenly matched on your opponent's on your turn, going second against your opponent, right? So yeah, so let's say, for example, let's say you have Ariana and trap trick in your hand. Normal Ariana, search clock, activate clock, set trap trick, battle phase. Ariana crash into one of your opponent's monsters, trap trick into evenly matched on your, and then evenly match at end of battle phase. So that's something you can literally do. Like this helps you, this enables you to potentially do search evenly match and use it going second. So it can be quite powerful if you use it correctly. So yeah, so one of each. You don't need more than one. Finally, we are running 2 Arias the Labyrnth Butler. So this card is pretty cool. We're running 2 of because, again, this is better for going second, but it's not bad for going first. Sometimes going first, you just get to welcome it immediately, and you can either get a lady or lovely, and then you can search a card or reset a card. Maybe get a pop. Yeah, so going first, this could potentially give you some turn 1 plays where you either get a search or a pop off before your opponent has a chance to do anything. Going second, this card allows you to use normal trap cards on your opponent's turn, which means, let's say they're a big combo deck, right? Super heavy or whatever. They start comboing out their Snake Eye. Let's say you open this card with either Torrential Tribute or Daruma Karma Cannon or Trap Trick, right? You can literally use her to go into either hit your opponent with a Torrential Tribute, a Karma Cannon, and again, Trap Trick goes into both those cards on your opponent's turn while they're going first. So this gives you turn 0 plays, essentially, right? Which can be very powerful. Her other effect is that whenever your opponent chains a card to your normal trap card or labyrinth card, you can actually just special her from the graveyard. So yeah, she's just like a body. And guess what, folks? She's level 6, which means you can now make Chaos Angel using Arias and Ariana, right? 4 plus a 6. At a 2 of, I never bricked with this card. This card never bricked for me. I have tried playing her in the TCG as a 3 of. I thought she was a little bricky. You usually don't want to see more than one in your opening hand, right? Obviously, if you're going second, at a 2 of ratio, you have a 1 in 4 chance of having her in your opening hand, which is not bad, especially and assume you have any other reasonable trap card, like which most of the time you will. Yeah, you can make some plays on your opponent's turn. Or you can just welcome into a lady, for example, and then you have a 3K beater going into your opponent's turn, going second, and you can just beat over something. Maybe beat over an Appaloosa, maybe crash into a Barone, right? You just have like a 3K beater, right? Potentially. So those are all our Labyrinth monsters. 10 cards are monsters. Yeah, it's already getting pretty monster heavy. We're trying to not have too many monsters. Before anyone asks, why do I not play Ariane? The reason I don't like Ariane is because, unlike Ariana, Ariana has no cost for her ability to search. So you normal summon Ariana, you activate her effect to search, your opponent ashes your imperm, that's fine. You still have, you don't neg, right? However, Ariane says, Ariane is potentially another way to get out transaction rollback from your field, right? Technically, you could, if you have a rollback in hand or on your field, you can use Ariane to send it to the graveyard, right? And then you can special Ariana from the deck. Ariana can use her effect, right? So the reason I don't like Ariane is because you have to send a trap card specifically, right? The furniture, you can send any card. You can send an extra copy of. You can send bricks. You can send an extra copy of Arias. You can send an extra copy of Lord. You can send an extra copy of furniture. You can send Lovely, right? You can kind of send bricky cards to the graveyard. Like a lot of those could be our monsters, right? Whereas Ariane must send a trap card. The problem is the only trap card usually worth sending is transaction rollback. So if you don't have transaction rollbacks, do I really want to send a torrential tribute to the graveyard to get an Ariana? That doesn't seem like a good trade-off. It's like most of our trap cards are good and we don't want to send, right? So that's why I don't like Ariane. Also, if you get Ash or Imperm, you're neg 1, right? Because she sends her cost. So your normal Ariane, you pitch a card to activate her effects. They chain Ash, they chain Vela, they chain Imperm. You're neg 1. You're down a card, right? That you wouldn't have been down if it was just an Ariana, right? So I do not like Ariane. So I do not recommend playing her. All right, let's get into the spell trap. So 1 copy of the field spell. This card is cracked. 3 copies of Big Welcome, 2 copies of Regular Welcome. We'll only do 2 copies of Regular Welcome because we are playing Trap Trick. And also, this card recycles itself from the graveyard, so it's very easy to recur this, right? Yeah, so this specials a Labyrinth monster from deck, and then locks you into Fiends. And then on a subsequent turn, if a monster leaves the field by a normal trap card, you can reset this from the graveyard. So yeah, so you don't really need 3. And then, of course, Big Welcome, which is the mandatory 3 of, because it does not recur itself as easily. So this card specials a Labyrinth monster from hand, deck, or graveyard. So this can help you get your Labyrinth monsters that have been killed back. This can help you unbrick Lovely from your hand, right? And then after you summon, you have to bounce another card. And since another monster, and since a monster leaves the field by normal trap, this triggers all your Labyrinth cards. This triggers Lovely, triggers Welcome, triggers Furniture, triggers everything, right? Triggers Ariana. Yeah, so very good card. And then the second effect is on a subsequent turn. So you can only use one of these effects. So either Shatter Summon or use the second effect, which is banish this card from your graveyard for cost to bounce a card, a monster on the field. If you have a level 8 or higher Fiend monster, you can bounce one of your opponent's cards. If you have like a lower Fiend monster, you have to bounce your own monster. So yeah, this can help you dodge Imperms, dodge Veilers, dodge any targeting abilities. It's just an amazing card. I really hope Konami never touches these cards. I know the OCG is semi-limited Big Welcome to 2. I think that's a mistake. This card does make Labyrinth significantly stronger, but I don't think it makes it oppressive or broken, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, one more effect from Ariana I forgot to say. So other than the normal summon search, she also has a second effect, which whenever a monster leaves you by normal trap card, you can draw a card and then special a Fiend from your hand, or set the card, set a trap card, right? The field spell, very important. Whenever you activate a Welcome or Big Welcome, you can add an additional effect, which is after Welcome, Big Welcome resolve, you also get to pop a card non-targeting on the field. So this is amazing. If you have a field spell plus a Welcome, a regular Welcome, you can summon out Lovely from your deck, pop a monster, and then immediately trigger Lovely effect to pop another card because technically this appends the pop effect to the Labyrinth normal trap card. So yeah, it can trigger all your Labyrinth effects. And then the second effect this has, which is very important, is that whenever you use a non-Labyrinth normal trap card, you can special a Fiend from graveyard or hand. So if you had to bounce Lovely back to your hand, or if Lovely got outed, you can just revive her, right? This also means that you can run cards like Torrential Tribute, right? You can, let's say you're sitting on a lady, and then your opponent summons a bunch of monsters. You have this card, you have a Torrential Tribute set. Your opponent summons like 4 monsters. You Torrential Tribute Chain Lady to search under card. You'll pop the field, including your lady, but then this card immediately revives lady. So it's all good. It's all good in the hood, right? Yeah, great card. Definitely a one of. Kind of bricky if you see this in an open hand. Most of the time you want to search it. You never want to see more than one open hand. So yeah, one of is the correct ratio. So yeah, we are at 16 Labyrinth Engine cards. This is the most we've ever been at, folks. Some people will tell you to play more. I think those people are out of their minds. Because again, we want to fill this deck with like powerful trap cards that we can actually make use of our Labyrinth Engine to be able to search them, recur them from the graveyard, etc. All right, that's our Labrynth Core. Next, I'm going to get into cards that I think should be, honestly, in every single trap deck / back row deck. Let's start with Lord of the Heavenly Prison. We're playing this at a 2 of now. So 2 Lords. I always play this at 3. I'm cutting this down to 2. Main reason because we want to we need room in our deck for other cards. Number 1. Number 2, sometimes you don't want to open more than 1 in your opening hand. A 2 ratio helps resolve that. But also, the third reason is in the current format there isn't that much popping going on. So, for example, Super Heavy Samurai sets up negates. They don't really set up pops, right? Branded used to set up pop like back in the day before the Bestials and the newer branded cards came out. It used to be that, your opponent would try to Guardian Chimera on your turn and pop 2 cards, right? They don't really do that anymore. They do completely different plays with branded Bestials and all that stuff now. Used to be that in the Sword Soul meta, you would have Sword Soul maybe setting up a blackout, and then you need they pop 2 cards, and you want to protect from that, right? Or maybe in the DP meta, right? Like Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer would try to pop one of your back rows. It'd be nice to have Lord to protect it. In the current format, you don't really have much popping going on. Now, that being said, we just had the new, or I don't know if it's the entire. So Unchained just got some new support. I think they got their Yama, right? I don't know if they got Shavara or the other Unchained cards, but Yama's out. Unchained might suddenly become a thing, and Unchained loves popping cards, including their own cards. And Lord stops both players from popping set cards on either field, right? So Lord is actually very good against Unchained, and if Unchained somehow takes over, I might actually bump Lord back up to 3, because being able to use Lord and making it so they can't pop their own set cards is actually really fucking funny. It's actually like a hard counter to Unchained. Anyway, so yeah, for those who don't know Lord, 2 effects. The first effect you'll use most of the time during your main phase, activate it to reveal in hand, and then no set cards can be destroyed. That includes monsters and back row. That also includes your opponents. So while it's revealed, set cards cannot be destroyed. Now, and then if a set spell trap is flipped and activated while this is in your hand, revealed or unrevealed, on the new chain, you can special this to the field. If you special this while it was revealed by its other effects from the previous turn, you can set a spell trap card of your choice from the deck. Obviously, it can't be activated immediately, but if you have Coup Clock, you might be able to activate it immediately. So Lord is actually another way for you to search spell trap. So Lord is just amazing. Anyone who's actually played Lord in their Labyrinth knows how amazing this card is in the Labyrinth deck, right? Because not only is this a 3K body, right? It's a searcher for spell traps, but it's also just like it can enable your OTK, right? So, for example, let's say you interrupted your opponent's turns, right? They have no monsters on the field. It's their end phase. Let's say you use Trap Trick. You summon Lord of the Heavenly Prison. You set Big Welcome from your deck. You now have a Big Welcome and Lord on the field, and then whatever you got off Trap Trick. Your turn. Battle phase. Lord, swing for 3K. Still battle phase. Big Welcome. Summon Lovely. Bounce Lord back into your hand. On a new chain, you can do Lovely 1 to pop, Lord 2 to resummon itself, because you use Big Welcome. You can summon Lord back. Lord comes down. Lovely pops a card in hand, for example. Swing with Lovely, swing with Lord a second time. That's OTK. That's more than 8,000 damage. So, yeah. And enable your OTKs. This card can beat over strong monsters. This can literally crash into a Baron de Fleur. If you manage to get this guy out, and then they have a Baron de Fleur, oh, cool, 3,000 attack. 3,000 attack. Let's go. So you just crash into Baron de Fleur. Yeah, this card is insanely cracked. I wish I had more room to put this at 3, but I think 2 is fine for now. But again, if we go into a format where there's a lot of popping involved, you might want to bring Lord back. So, for example, let's say Unchained makes a research. Let's say they finally released the Fire King's cards. The Fire King Snake Eyes deck has a lot of popping involved. In that case, you definitely want Lord back at 3, probably, in my opinion. So, yeah, but for now, Lord at 2 is perfectly reasonable. Next, your pot cards. So we want 1 card of Pot of Extravagance, 1 copy of Pot of Prosperity. Unfortunately, both of these are limited to 1. I would rather have 2 Extravagance, but I don't have that option. For those of you who watch my content in the past, we are no longer running Pot of Duality. The reason we are no longer running Pot of Duality is because due to furniture, now that we're running furniture, so Pot of Duality says you cannot special on the turn you use it. So before, it was okay to run Duality because we almost never special summon monsters on our own turn, usually on our opponent's turn, right? But now that we have furniture and we use those furniture to like recycle itself and go into plays such as Chaos Angel, for example, you actually want to be able to special on your own turn. So that means Duality is no longer synergistic with our deck. It's actually anti-synergetic, right? So yeah, no more Pot of Duality. What we are running instead is 1 copy of Foolish Burial Goods. So I would rather. I wish this was at 2 copies, but because of the old tier format, Konami had the brain dead idea of, how do we hit tier? How about let's semi-limit Foolish Burial Goods so they can't use the Crystal Beast card to search the field spell. One of the most insanely deranged decisions ever made by Konami, right? Hitting this card to 1. This card is like, Konami, please fix your game. Bring this card back to 3. There's no reason it should be at 1. I mean, ideally, like we would run this at 2 because it's hard once per turn. But yeah, the main reason you have this card is to mill trap cards. Now, what would we mill? So we would be milling most of the time 2 copies of Transaction Rollback. So using Foolish Burial Goods to put the Transaction Rollback in the graveyard is literally an interruption, right? So if we open a hand with 4 trap cards and a Foolish Burial Goods will almost always send Transaction, and then that transaction in your graveyard is an additional interruption on your opponent's turn. So let's read Transaction because this card is new and it's insanely broken. So it has 2 effects, a field effect and a graveyard effect. So when it's on the field, pay half your life points, target a normal trap in your opponent's graveyard, copy its effect. The second effect is you can banish this card from your graveyard to pay half your life points, target a normal trap card in your graveyard and copy its effect, right? So most of the time, if your opponent most of your opponent won't have trap cards, like maybe they'll have an imperm. If they have an imperm or the Snake Eye trap card that negates, you can set this, right? But if they don't have any trap cards and you just want to get this into the graveyard as quickly as possible, either through Foolish Burial Goods or through a furniture pitch, right? Yeah, this lets you copy trap card effects, and the thing is that you're not limited by the once per turn. So remember how I said Dogmatic Punishment is only once per turn? If you have Dogmatic Punishment with a rollback in your graveyard, you can use punishment twice per turn. So you can actually send Entis twice and get 4 pops off in one turn. Or maybe you can Torrential Tribute, again, right? To clear your opponent's board again. Or you could use Welcome. Right? Let's say they ash your Welcome or Big Welcome. You can roll back, copy your Welcome or Big Welcome, and they cannot ash it. So even if they didn't ash it, because this card does not say search, it just says copies the effect, right? It's kind of like Anaconda. So Anaconda says copy the effect of a fusion spell. So you can't ash Anaconda, but you can't ash rollback either. Yeah. So this card is insanely good. I originally tried it out of 3 of, but I was seeing too many copies in my opening hand. Seeing 2 rollback in your opening hand is one of the worst feelings in the world. You never want to see it. So I cut this down to 2, and I think I'm happy with this ratio. Most of the time, you're not gonna use this more than twice in a game anyway, so it's perfectly fine to just have this at 2 of. Some people were kind of, why didn't Ryan Yu play rollback? Because he doesn't have trap cards. That's why. So very simple. We're playing a trap heavy version of Labyrinth. We're playing Transaction Rollback. It's that simple. Like it's not even negotiable. If we were not playing trap cards, we would not be playing this. All right, cool. Moving on. 2 copies of Trap Trick. This card is busted. Banish normal trap from deck to set a normal trap from deck with the same name, and then it can be activated this turn. So this is essentially a searcher for all your normal trap cards. Whatever trap card you need in the situation, maybe you need a Torrential Tribute, maybe you need a Karma Cannon, maybe you need a Transaction Rollback, huh? Why would you use Trap Trick to go into Transaction Rollback? Go see my latest short video. If you have Trap Trick, you can theoretically, let's say your opponent, you're going first, you set 3 or set 4 pass. Let's say your opponent activates Lightning Storm or Harpy's Feather Duster. What do? You Trap Trick. So you chain to Feather Storm or Lightning Storm or Feather Duster. You chain Trap Trick. You send Transaction Rollback to set up Transaction Rollback onto your field. And then the chain resolves. Harpies or Lightning Storm will destroy your rollback and put it into the graveyard. And guess what? Now you have a rollback in your graveyard with a Trap Trick, which means you can, at any point during your opponent's turn, rollback, copy Trap Trick, and search any trap card you want from the deck. Maybe you need to, whatever you need to deal with your opponent's combo. Maybe you need a Karma Cannon. Maybe you need a Torrential Tribute, right? And if you also have a lady in hand, you can special the lady, roll back into Trap Trick, set your Karma Cannon or whatever. You can then use that Karma Cannon, chain lady, and to get your search out, and then rebuild your board on your next turn. So this, like the Trap Trick, rollback, like all this is so good. You never have to be scared of Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster ever again. Because of stuff like this. So yeah, please play Trap Trick. This card is once per turn. It is 2 extra copies of all your normal traps in the deck. So, we have 2 welcomes, and we have 4 welcomes. We have 5 big welcomes, right? This card is cracked. Please play it. And then finally, we're playing 3 copies of Solemn Strike. I think this card should be in every trap deck. Most of the decks you'll be dealing with in most formats are meta combo decks that put out a bunch of negates or crazy monster effects, right? This card is good going first or second, right? If you're going second, they set up a board with Baronne de Fleur, right? This card eats a Baronne de Fleur, right? This card eats an access code. This card eats a Borreload Savage Dragon. So whatever negates or annoying monsters you're putting up, this card eats them up, right? This is not once per turn, so we play it at 3. If we see 3 Solemn Strikes, all 3 are alive. So this can either negate summons of monsters. Like, let's say they make access code, you negate the summon, access code is gone. Let's say you're against Snake Eyes, they make a Promethean Princess. They attempt to link summon Promethean Princess, you negate the summon of Promethean Princess with this. Promethean Princess is negated, destroyed. It's in the graveyard, but because it was not properly summoned, because you negated the summon, it cannot revive itself off its effects, so it's dead in the water. You'll never have to worry about Promethean Princess ever again. Yeah, this card is great. This can also be used if you really want to. Let's say you welcome or big welcome the Ash. You can theoretically Solemn Strike, negate the Ash, and then get your monster out, right? So Solemn Strike can also be used against Ash. Most of the time, you're not going to do that. Why is that? Because, well, if you have a Lord in hand, let's say you use Welcome, they Ash you summon Lord, you set another Welcome, you set another big Welcome, right? So, yeah, Lord gives you, makes it so you don't have to care about Ash. Solemn Strike makes it so you don't have to care about Ash. Actually, most of this deck is fairly immune to hand traps in general. Yeah, so I like being able to ignore most of my opponent's cards, right? Because most of your opponent, like a lot of these combo decks with like the 15 hand traps or whatever, they're specifically built to combat other similar decks. Most are not built to combat back row decks, right? So they'll put up an Appaloosa, which is monster negates. Cool. You have monster negates, I have trap cards, so I don't care, right? Or, they have a Nibiru. Oh, my opponent summons 5 times. Oh, cool. We're not going to summon 5 times with this deck, so I don't care about Nibiru, right? So with this deck build, you can mostly ignore hand traps. You will never lose a game due to an Ash Blossom or an Imperm or a Veiler. Like those are not the cards that will be the cause of you losing games. Whereas, like with a lot of other combo decks, depending on how you draw, like you get Ash, your turn is over, you might have just lost the game, right? Potentially, depending on what deck you're playing, how your hand was, etc. So, yeah, Solemn Strike makes it so you can ignore that as well. So anyway, so this is the core of trap decks, and now we're at 28 cards. For the last 12 cards, I'm going to get into what cards I think are good for the format. And these 12 cards are like kind of slotted in for. It's very format dependent. But yeah, so these next 12 cards are the ones most likely to change over the course of time. So we're going to do 3 copies of Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon. This card is insanely goated. It is so good. This card will single-handedly win you games against Snake Eyes, against any deck that link summons a lot, right? Against decks with towers, right? It used to be that Labrynth had very little answers to Ad Ignister, like, oh, how do we deal with your rival Cyber's Ad Ignister? Now we have an answer. Yeah, this card will take out towers, Purely, X Purely Noir, or whatever it's called, right? The tower monster. You definitely want to get rid of that, right? This is also really good against, for example, what's the other monster? So sometimes when Super Heavy Samurai makes Baronne de Fleur, right? They make it with the Stardust XL Synchro Dragon, which makes it so that Baronne is immune to effects. But this card, like, just gets rid of that. Like, it just sends the Baronne to the graveyard, right? Or let's say you're up against Vanquish Soul and they summon Kaiser, which is their main Vanquish Soul boss monster, which has a effect that you can make himself immune to activated effects. Yeah, so Karma Cannon says, change as many monsters on the field as possible face on the defense position. Then, if either player controls a face-up monster, they must send all face-up monsters in control of the graveyard. So the second part, which says the player must send cards, means that you're not this card is not sending the monster with its effect. It's making the player send their own monsters. So yeah, so any cards that are immune to card effects are not immune to this one, right? It's similar to Evenly Matched, right? Yeah, so this card is really good. Link monsters cannot be flipped face down, which means any link monster on the field will just get sent in the graveyard. If you're against Snake Eyes and you're not sure where to Karma Cannon them, a good point to Karma Cannon them is after they summon IP Masquerena. So usually as part of the Snake Eyes combo, they link off Flamberge and some other body to make IP Masquerena. Flamberge activates in the graveyard, brings back 2 bodies, and then they usually go into Promethean Princess after that. So if you Karma Cannon them once IP Masquerena hits the field, they lose IP. The two bodies that come back are flip face down. They can no longer link with them, and they've already used their Flam Bridge ability. So most of their extensions are just gone, right? And they don't get a Breathing Princess. Whereas if you use it after Princess comes out, Princess is in the graveyard, and it can be used to revive it. She can use her effect to revive herself. So I like to use this right after the IP hits the field when you're in the Snake Eyes matchup. And then this card, like, go watch my Adventures. Every time I saw this card, it's like, this can protect you from being OTK'd by Branded. This can protect you from Math Mech, right? Like the Link 5 monster, right? This can just out so many things. It's just so useful, right? Good against Scareclaw, right? Good against so much. Please play this card. I could not justify cutting this to fewer than 3 copies. It's not once per turn, folks. You can, if you open all 3 Karma Cannons, all 3 can be used on your opponent's turn. Like, that's how insane it is. Yeah, so go watch my Adventures of. You'll see how useful this card came up in the Labrynth Mirror matchup. This can make flip on your opponent's end phase. This can flip their Lovely and Lady to face down defense position, which is super awkward for them because that means they can't use any of their effects, and they're sitting ducks, right? So very good card. Please play at 3. We are at 2 copies of Torrential Tribute. I started this month with 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. I ended up cutting this because this is not once per turn, right? This is a board wipe. I ended up cutting it to 2 because I needed space in my deck for other cards, which I'll get into very shortly. But I would say that Torrential Tribute is definitely getting weaker over time as the meta evolves because, for example, one thing I noticed that a shift happened within the beginning of March and end of March. I started seeing way more Tier Limit cards, decks, right? Tier Limits is not... Torrential is not great against Tier Limits, right? I started seeing... obviously... there was always the situation where, let's say you're against Branded and they have a Branded opening. This is not, this is okay. Branded opening got limited to 1, but most of the time you'd rather have the Karma Cannon or one of the other cards that trap cards I'm about to show you, right? The Unchained stuff just came out. Once the I don't know if Unchained is going to make a resurgence, but if they do, this is not very good against Unchained. Against Fire King Snake Eyes, whenever that releases, this is not going to be very good against that. Still a good card, but I just felt like there were other trap cards I really needed to have in the current format that justified cutting this to 2. Otherwise, I would have this at 3, because this card is cracked, right? All right. So all these cards are 2 ofs or more. They're searchable off of Trap Trick. We're going to play 2 copies of Evenly Matched. This card is insane. Great going second. Can completely blow out Snake Eyes boards. Snake Eyes usually doesn't have a response for this because most of their end boards involve either an Appaloosa, an Ambler Whale, an IP, right? Some combination of that. No spell trap negates. Sometimes they might go into the Sinful Spoils trap card, which gives them a negate, assuming they have a witch on the field, right? I played many games this month, and even last month when Snake Eyes was a thing, and the only time Evenly Matched ever got negated by the Sinful Spoils trap was 1 time in a Duelist Cup. That's it. It never got negated any other time by Snake Eyes. So yeah, this is very good against Snake Eyes. Very good against the Labrynth Mirror matchup. The thing about mirror matchups is most of the time when you're doing mirror matchups, let's say you're doing the Labrynth Mirror matchup, in most mirror matchups, the player that goes first wins, assuming both decks and pilots are relatively similar levels, right? But yeah, so you lose a coin toss, you're in the mirror matchup against Labrynth, you open this card, you just play it and win, right? Most Labrynth players do not know how to play around Evenly Matched, or do not build their decks to play around Evenly Matched, or just get blown out and you just win, right? With Pot of Prosperity, Pot of Extravagance, you can more likely see this card, right? This card is also searchable off of Trap Trick, right? So I mentioned before Ku Klux Trap Trick, but also it's a normal trap card. So whenever you're in the middle of the game and you notice that your opponent has way more cards on the field than you do, just use Lady to search into an Evenly Matched, or Trap Trick to search into an Evenly Matched, and then just play it at the end of a battle phase. You don't have to hit all their cards as long as you significantly reduce the size of their field. It's almost always worth it, right? So even though this is normally a going second card, in grind games, I've definitely used it for stuff like that, right? Against Branded, if they go into the brightest, the trap that negates the brightest, they can negate this, but most of the time they don't. A lot of times they go into Branded Retribution, or they go into some Branded Banishment, right? In which case their board is pretty wide open, and then you can blow them out with Evenly Matched. this card is probably the worst against Super Heavy because they set a bunch of Omni Negates, right? But it's just like a good card in general against most decks that you play against. Going second, like, worst case, this just eats up a Barone Negate, and then you can just clear their board on the next turn with like a Punishment or a Torrential Tribute, right? So against Tier Limits, if they do not set up Tier Limit Crime, you can blow them out. Tier Limits, even though they do make similar boards to before, they're not as consistent about it. So sometimes they'll have Crime, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll have Barone, sometimes they won't. It's a lot less consistent. Whereas before, in like when Tier was full power, they always had the Omni Negate. Now it's like not guaranteed that they do. So yeah, evenly match them, blow them out. This card's very good. By the way, folks, if you have evenly match with transaction rollback can copy the effect of evenly match at the end of battle phase. So yeah, here's a cool play you can do. Let's say you're going second, you open your hand with Foolish Burial Goods and evenly match. You Foolish Burial Goods, stand transaction rollback. Battle phase. End of battle, evenly match. Let's say the negate with a Barone. Still end of battle, evenly matched is now in the graveyard. Transaction rollback, evenly matched. Again, so you do a second time in one turn. And now evenly matched effect says that your opponent must have the same number of cards on the field as you. So because evenly matched is in the graveyard, not the field, they actually have to banish their entire field face down. Like, that's insanely powerful, right? Like, if they have to do that. This card is amazing. Let's say you don't have a Foolish Burial Goods. Let's say you have a Stove Torby in hand, a transaction rollback, and an evenly. So the way it works is battle phase, end of battle, evenly. Let's say they negate, evenly goes to the graveyard. It's still end of battle. Chainlink 1, Torby, pitch rollback. Chainlink 2, rollback, because Torby sends rollback to the graveyard for cost. And then Chainlink 2, you can roll back, banish yourself from the graveyard for cost, copy evenly matched. You'll evenly the board, they'll banish everything, and then Torby will resolve, you'll set a welcome card from the deck. So, yeah, this card is there's so much synergy with rollback, with like other cards you can do, with like Labrynth, right? It's just worth playing. We're at a 2 of because we don't want to see too many copies of this card, especially going first. It can be very bricky. This card has won me so many games. Just go watch my videos. It's really good. Some people notice my adventures of videos that I had I was running 2 copies of Sphere Mode. I cut those for Arias. Anyway, all right. So let's get into other cards. Against Castira is also very good. Let's go into 2 copies of Dogmatica Punishment. So searchable off of Trap Trick, right? Hard once per turn normally. Target a monster your opponent controls. Hit a monster with attack higher, greater than or equal to. And if you do, destroy that monster, and then you're locked out of the extra deck. So use this to send Entis. You get 2 pops. You pop a monster, then you pop a back row or another monster. You can send Garura to draw a card. You can send Malong to bounce a card, right? Very useful. Now, for their last 3 slots, we're playing 1 copy of D-Barrier. This card was originally not in my deck. This was a late addition because, like I said, I noticed after the Duelist Cup, a lot of branded and tier limit players came out of the woodworks, like out of nowhere, and I just kept seeing. I started seeing a lot of branded and tier limits, way more than before. Before it was like almost all Snake Eyes, and this card sucks against Snake Eyes. But then Snake Eyes kind of disappeared, and then all of a sudden you have a lot of branded show up and tier limits. This card is just searchable off of Lady, obviously. This can just just end a branded or tier limit's turn, right? And then obviously this is you can not just searchable off Lady, but you can recycle this off Lovely. And then I would say so. But then we just got a new pack with Bonfire, and now I started noticing that after Bonfire came out in the last few games of my last Adventures video, there was a lot more Snake Eyes players because Bonfire's out. So maybe the tier limits and the branded are going to go away, and then it's just going to be all Snake Eyes. So if you notice in your games that you're seeing a lot of Snake Eyes and not so many tier limits or branded, cut D-Berry out and put in your 3rd Torrential Tribute, for example. Or put in a 2nd Ice Dragon's Prison. I'm about to get into Ice Dragon's Prison. But yeah, so this is all very experience related. So I wasn't running this in the beginning of March because, again, no one was playing branded tier limits, and now end of March a lot of people are playing it, and then then suddenly Bonfire comes out, and then everyone's back on Snake Eye, so very few not as much branded. So I'm still going to keep this for now until I see branded and tier limits actually significantly reduce. But yeah, in the next month when I do my rank climbs, if I see only Snake Eyes, this card is the first to be cut. Just putting that out there. Well, before I go into the last two cards, so I did tease this card earlier in the month as an alternative to D-Barrier, because this is sort of like a D-Barrier in that once your opponent has one monster, like one Link monster, they cannot make a second Link monster. Once your opponent has one Fusion monster, they cannot make a second Fusion monster. So theoretically, this is like an alternative to D-Barrier against Snake Eyes, because once they make a Link Karibo, you could just Symbol's Archfiend, right? And then they can't Link Summon anymore, so they have to get Link Karibo off their field. And then but then if they make IP, they can't make any more. They can't Link Climb essentially under Symbol Archfiends, right? Same with Branded. They make Lubellion, they can't make any other fusion monsters, right? They can never make Mirror Jade under Symbol Archfiends. Same with Tier Limits. They make a Kikalos, they can never make any other fusion monsters. Also means your opponent can never Zeus you, right? If they make an Xyz monster, they can't make a second one. The reason I was playing this early. The reason I cut this is because going second, this card is not great. D-Barrier is great going second because D-Barrier has a second effect, which says that so where is it? This prevents your opponent from summoning that type of monster, but also says it negates the all monster effects of that type, right? So if you're going second against Branded and they already set up all their fusion monsters, you can just call fusion on the next turn. Not only could they not summon fusion monsters, but you negate all their existing fusion monsters. See that? So it's also good going second against Super Heavy Samurai. You can use this to call Synchros and negate Barone and Borlo Savage, for example, right? So this is actually a pretty good going second card as well, whereas Symbol Archfiend's not as much, so I end up cutting Symbol Archfiends. But again, if we go into the next month, the next rank climb, and I see everyone's playing Snake Eyes, no one cares about Tier Elements or Brandon anymore, then obviously, like I said, Deep Bear is the first card to go. Maybe some Archfiend makes a comeback, maybe not. I'm actually more inclined to put in a second copy of Ice Dragon. So let's talk about the next card, Ice Dragon's Prison. So Ice Dragon's Prison is very good in the current format. I almost bumped this up to 2. This is a 1-of, but I almost put this at 2 because of how good it is. Target monster in opponent's graveyard, special summon it, and then negate its effects, and then banish monster from both fields that have the same type. Against Snake Eyes, if you use this on a Flamberge and you banish both copies of their Flamberge, that's checkmate. They literally just lose the game instantaneously, because without Flamberge, they can't generate 2 bodies for their link summons and link climbs anymore. They're toast. They're completely screwed without Flamberge. Yeah, so you use this to hit the Flamberge. Labyrinth Mirror matchup. You use this to hit their lovely or hit their ladies, right? Banish them, right? Against Branded. A lot of Branded players, because of the new combos with the Bestials, they normally go Branded Fusion, Albion, Lubellion, Mirror Jade, right? Albion must banish an Albaz in order to fuse. So if they only have one Albaz in their graveyard, and they don't have any other Albaz, if they use Chainlink 1 Albion to attempt to fuse, and you do Chainlink 2 Ice Dragons, target their Albion, their Albaz in the graveyard, banish Albaz and Albion fizzles, cannot make Lubellion. Unless they have Albaz in hand, or field, of course, then they can still banish that Albaz. But the thing is, Albion is now banished. It is not in the graveyard, which means that, they can no longer use Bestial Lubellion to send Albion to the graveyard and summon itself, and then on the end phase, they get Albion effect, right? Because now their Albion is gone from the field, it's banished, they can't summon Bestial Lubellion, they won't get an end phase search unless they somehow still manage to bring out Mirror Jade and banish that, right? So Ice Dragon is pretty good against Brandon. It's not like killer. It's like against Snake Eyes, you banish your Flamberge as GG. You just win instantaneously, right? Obviously, Ice Dragons will also be used on their Pyros, banish their Oak, right? Banish their Poplar, or whatever. But yeah, you hit the Flamberge, it's game over. Against Brandon, you hit the Albion and the Albaz. It's not exactly game over, but they're significantly crippled. Obviously, Labyrinth Mirror matchup, this wins you the matchup. What other matchup? Super Heavy Samurai. You can use this on chain to their Scarecrow, right? So their Link 1 Super Heavy Samurai Scarecrow. They use their effect to try to revive a monster. You chain Ice Dragons, you target that monster to try to revive, summon it, banish itself and the Scarecrow, and their combo might just be over, right? So yeah, very good card. I really, really wanted to bump this up to a 2 of. I'm like right on the fence of making this a 2 of because of how fucking useful this is. Against Mathmech, they're all Cybers, right? Oh, you make access code? Cool. I'll target Diameter in your graveyard, banish access code and Diameter. GG, right? Awkward, right? If you banish Diameter or Sigma, right? So let's say they summon out Mathmech Sigma. Most Mathmech players only play 1 Sigma, 1 Diameter. Diameters are limited, right? Oh, they bring out Sigma, Ice Dragons on their Diameter in the graveyard, banish both, and their playmaking ability significantly reduces, for example. So Ice Dragons is extremely good in the current format. I expect it's only going to get better because in the Snake Eye, more people are going to be playing Snake Eyes against tier elements. Let's say Kit Kalos, right? Kit Kalos uses the fact, is on the field. Maybe they finally mill their Havnus or they mill their Shiren. Ice Dragons, they're Aqua, either Shiren or Havnus, banish itself with Kit Kalos, and then it's GG, right? It's like they're significantly critical. Yeah, so maybe instead of, if I do cut D-Bear in the next month, it'll be for a second Ice Dragons, because this card is so good. It's so good. I can't stress to enough how good it is right now. Especially if Unchained makes a resurgence, right? Unchained got some new support. Guess what? Unchained are all fiends, and they're all fiends that want to get destroyed and sent to the graveyard. What if you banish them? Then they're very sad. They are very sad if you banish them. So yeah, keep this card on your radar. If you go into the next month and you're climbing and you see, there's not that much branded or tier elements, but you see a lot of Unchained, you see a lot of Snake Eyes, swap out the D-Barrier for a second Ice Dragons. I promise you will not regret it. In fact, a second Ice Dragons will be good because it will now be searchable off Trap Trick. So yeah, so keep this on your radar. And then finally, the last card in our deck is Rivalry of Warlords. So we no longer play Skill Drain, we no longer play Gozen. The reason we play Gozen is because it's easily outable by Snake Eyes. Nightmare Phoenix is a fire monster. They can get into it very easily. Most of their deck is fire, right? Rivalry hits Snake Eyes completely. They're all different types. You have Pyros, you have Dragons, you have Spellcasters, Cybursts, Warriors, etc. Right? Fairy. Against Branded, Mirror J is a Worm. Lubella and Albion are Dragons. The Bishops are Dragons. The Oluber is a Fairy, right? Quem and Partija are Spellcasters. So yeah, Rivalry is pretty good against Branded. Although if they're running Furious Dragon, Warlord Furious Dragon, they can technically lock themselves in a Dragon, and then they use Furious Dragon to out Rivalry. But then they've gone into a Furious Dragon, not into a Mirror J, which is a lot easier to deal with. So, yeah, so Rivalry quite good against Super Heavy. They're locked into machines. They can't make Barone. They can only make the Synchro 8 Super Heavy, which might give them a chance to pop a Spell Trap, right? Rivalry is just the best floodgate at the moment. It's better than TC Boo. It's better than Gozen. Better than Skill Drain because Snake Eyes can dodge Skill Drain with a lot of their effects, right? They can summon big beaters without relying on monster effects. So yeah, it's just Skill Drain is not so good in the format right now. This card completely dumpsters what's it called? Tier Elements, right? Because Tier Elements also, they have Aquas, they have Warriors, they have Fiends, they have a lot of stuff. They have Psychics, right? So yeah, you hit them Rivalry, you lock them into like Aquas or Fiends or Psychics or whatever. It's like, yeah, they're not getting much done. They're gonna mill a bunch of cards and accomplish nothing, essentially. So yeah, Rivalry is the one and only floodgate we are running at the moment. Although this, if an Unchained format arises, this is not going to be good against Unchained. Obviously, Mathmech, this was never good against Mathmech. But again, it's a one-of, right? It's not like we're running 3 Rivalries. We're not full committing to Rivalry as our win condition. It's just if you draw this, you might just win instantly kind of card, right? So anyway, so that's the main deck. Hope you like this list. Let's go into the extra deck. The extra deck is fairly straightforward. Most of it is Dogmatic Punishment targets. Extra deck time. Elder, Entity, and Tis. 3 of these. This is Dogmatic Punishment target. We're running 1 copy of Malong. Malong is a Dogmatic Punishment target. Similar to Entis, except it bounces cards, but it's only 2200 attack, so it's slightly less versatile. I'm still running one copy of Cyframe War Omega. This, if you watch some of my Adventures of videos, I use this once to basically shuffle back an Albaz that my opponent had in their graveyard in the Brandon matchup. And the reason that's important is because in the subsequent turn, they Branded Fusion into Albion. They milled Albaz again, but then because they didn't have that second Albaz, I was able to Ice Dragons them. So their Albion Fusion fizzled into a shitty Despian Quertus or whatever. So yeah, this can be very good. Sometimes there's just annoying cards you want to get out of the graveyard. Promethean Princess, for example. You don't want to deal with that. Send Omega on a punishment, bounce Promethean Princess, or bounce Branded Opening, right? Bounce whatever annoying graveyard cards you don't want to deal with anymore. Yeah, so I like having that option with Omega. More Dogmatic punishment targets. 2 copies of Garura. This is just draw card. 1500 attack, so not that many monsters go into it. But we do run 2 copies of Tri-Brigade Bucephalus. This is a 3500 attack. Its graveyard effect says you send a beast, wing beast, or beast warrior. So you can Tri-Brigade Bucephalus and then send Garura. So you still get your draw 1, right? Great against Kashtira, great against a lot of those kinds of matchups, right? With high attack monsters. 3500 attack covers a wide range. So those are all our punishment targets. Now for our non-punishment targets, we are running 2 copies of Chaos Angel, 2 copies of Muck Raker. Whoops. 1 copy of Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. 1 copy of Dark the Dark Charmer. So Dark is just like a generic, I want a dark monster from their graveyard. Can be good against Labyrinth matchups, can be good against Branded, right? You link away some small monsters like, what's the name? Torby, and maybe like a Ariana, right? Steal their Mirror Jade, you steal their Lady Labyrinth. Chaos Angel is cracked. If you want to bump this up to a 3 and cut like Dark or Soldier of Chaos, go for it. I've never really needed more than one, like, I never really summoned this more than once a game anyway. If you're summoning this once, you're probably just winning the game straight up, right? So level 10 Seeker, you don't need tuners because you can use light and dark monsters. So any combination of that adds up to 10. So Torby plus any of your ladies or lovelies, Ariana plus Arias, I'll give you Chaos Angel on summon, target the card in the field, banish it. And then if you use our dark monster, which you have, it says monster control cannot be destroyed by battle. So that's very powerful. Yeah. So 2 Chaos Angel, feel free to bump this to 3. 2 Muckraker. Sometimes you need a revive. This has come in handy quite a bit of times. Sometimes you just need a revive of Lovely or a lady from your graveyard. Most of the time you'll be reviving Lovely because Lovely like immediately gets you resources from your graveyard. And then maybe you're just sitting on a dead transaction rollback in your hand. Oh, this is another way to get transaction rollback out of your hand, right? You can go into Muckraker. So 2 of, it's a fiend, right? So if you're fiend locked, you can still make her. Soldier of Chaos, it's just like one of those, I need to take out a monster and I don't have access to like Guru Karma Cannon, right? You can make this the big beater, it can banish cards untargeted. This is probably, if you're going to cut anything from this, actually I cut this guy first. I never made this guy recently. Last time I made him, I think was last month. Yeah, if you want a 3rd Chaos Angel, cut this guy. Eventually we're going to get that new Xyz monster, the Zeus replacement. Sky Crisis Typhon, I think is what it's called, right? That card is going to replace this card. As soon as that card comes out, I'm taking out Soldier of Chaos and I'm putting in Typhon because it's a fiend and it's like a board breaker. It's like a very good card. So yeah, so this is the first on the chopping block for extra deck. So yeah, feel free to make a 3rd Chaos Angel if you really want to. When Little Knight eventually comes out, we'll probably cut out and make Muckraker or something. Because Little Knight is fucking stupid, right? We'll make some adjustments to extra deck once Little Knight and what's his name Typhon come out. But yes, but right now this is a very good extra deck. It'll serve you well. But yeah, feel free to make whatever minor changes you want. The extra deck is like not as important as your main deck. Your extra deck is just like win more, like do more kind of things, right? Like it's like their punishment targets, their extended follow up. Chaos Angel has good synergy with your deck because Lovely, let's say Lovely pops a monster. Torby returns. Lovely resets big welcome from your graveyard. You use Torby and Lovely to make Chaos Angel, you banish one of their cards, and on the next turn, you have a Big Welcome. Big Welcome will return Lovely, bounce Chaos Angel to your extra deck, pop one of their cards, which returns... Well, the bouncing to the extra deck also returns Torby, right? You get a pop, and then you can just rinse and repeat, right? So this is like an amazing... has amazing synergy with Labrynth. Like, I feel like you have to run this interaction just because of how amazingly synergistic it is. Before anyone asks me, no, I'm not going to run an Unchained package in Labrynth. I don't think it's worth it. The cards are not that good. Like, they're just other cards I'd rather have. Like, I'd rather have another Ice Dragons. I'd rather have more copies of Torrential Tribute. I'd rather have, like, my 3 Karma Cannon. So, no, I will not be playing Unchained Labrynth or any Unchained package in my Labrynth. The only time I would add an Unchained package to Labrynth is if I cut Dogmatic Punishment. So, if we enter a format with Dogmatic Punishment is no longer good or useful at all, then yes, I cut Dogmatic Punishment in all the targets, and then I add Unchained. That's the only time I'll do an Unchained package in Labrynth. So before anyone asks, I'm just answering that right away. Anyway, so that's my deck list. This got me to Master 1. This should get you to Master 1. I think this is more fun and interesting than the Ryan Yu hand trap build. I already discussed in my other video why the issues I have with that build and why specifically that build was made for the Duelist Cup specifically, right? But yeah, you should be able to win going second with this deck. You'll definitely be able to win going first. Yeah, you just have to be smart and know the interactions and know what your opponent's cards do, right? So, like, Labrynth is probably one of the most punishing decks for missing activations or missing the right moment to do stuff or to respond or to react, right? With combo decks, it's a lot less punishing because you have so many combo lines and extenders. You make one mistake, it's whatever, like, I'll just do this thing like this other way, right? Whereas with Labrynth, you really have to know what you're doing and what the interactions between your deck and your opponents are, right? Go watch my shorts, right? Like that Lightning Storm video where I just get blown out by Lightning Storm. A lot of Labrynth pilots might not know the trick that I did in that video to break my opponent's board and then completely recover, right? There's a lot of tricks like that you just might not know, like what I explained earlier with how you can use transaction rollback with evenly matched and a furniture, right? To banish your opponent's entire board while also getting your furniture card on the field, right? Like, there's a lot of these small little interactions. Let's talk more about Foolish Burial Goods. This card is not just good for dumping transaction rollback. This is good for dumping any card. What do I mean by that? So let's say you don't have a welcome, but you need a welcome. Foolish Burial Goods welcome. Why not? Welcome is a trap card that you want in your graveyard because it has an effect that says if you remove a monster from the field with a normal trap effect, Welcome resets itself. So let's say you open with with Foolish Burial Goods and a bunch of blowout cards. You open Torrential, you open Karma Cannon, you open Punishment, you open Ice Dragons. All these cards, but no engine. Foolish Burial Goods into send Welcome. Do your set your cards. Your opponent's going to combo. Eventually, you're going to Torrential Tribute or Punishment or whatever. And then because Welcome is in the graveyard, you just return it to your field. So this is essentially like a searcher, right? For a lot of those cards, right? Let's say you don't open Evenly Match. Let's say you open Foolish Burial Goods, Torby, or Syndraglier with Transaction Rollback. You Foolish Burial Goods Evenly Match. You go in the battle phase and end the battle. Torby / Furniture 1, Chainlink 1, send Rollback. Chainlink 2, Rollback, copy evenly, and then you just banish your whole field, right? Or maybe you just really need a certain trap card. So, for example, remember, Lovely is a monster that returns trap cards from your graveyard onto your field, right? So Lady's the one that searches, but let's say you don't have Lady, but you have Lovely. You can literally Foolish Burial Goods any trap card you want from your deck, and then Lovely can set it immediately, right? It's just so good. So I don't have Virus, so I cut Virus because I feel like Virus is not very good in this current format, Erratic Urban Virus, but in the TCG, I side deck Virus. And yeah, in Labyrinth Mirror matchups, I'll side in Virus. And yeah, sometimes I'll get a Lovely on the field. I don't have Lady yet. I'll just Foolish Burial Goods Virus, and then Lady will just set Virus, and then it's GG, right? So this is actually like a searcher, right? You can Foolish Burial Goods fucking, where is it? Big Welcome. Let's say you have a Lovely on the field. Foolish Burial Goods Big Welcome. Or you have a Lady on the field, right? You now have a bounce, right? Because it's now in your graveyard. You want this in your graveyard to bounce, right? So much you can do with Foolish Burial Goods. It blows my mind that I see Labyrinth players who play Rollback and don't play this card. It's just like, why? This card is for fucking free. Are they going to Ash this? No, they're not. I mean, if they do Ash, that's hilarious. But yeah, this card, it just opens up so many possibilities. Like, it's insane. Yeah, and in worst case scenario, this just thins your deck, right? It's like, oh, puts a card in your graveyard that you want there, and then when you draw cards from now on, your deck has like more useful cards. Right? Whatever. It's just a good card. There's nothing like, and the synergy with rollback and like evenly and all these other welcome cards, it's just so good that it's like hard to justify not having it. I really wish this was a 2 of, because I'd be playing this at 2, like I do in the TCG. Yeah, I've never bricked on this card. In a TCG, every time I see this card, it's super useful, right? I've never had this card not be useful, or be like, oh fuck, I wish this was not. No, this card is fucking great. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. If you want to see this deck in action, go watch the previous videos that I posted. I have a lot of Adventures of videos. I have a short, right? I don't know when my next video will be. Probably next month with another Adventures of for the rank climb there. Who knows? But yeah, if you don't like hand traps, if you're bored of standard Yu-Gi-Oh, if you like trap cards, if you like Labrynth, if you like waifus, right? If you like mommies, like women, waifus that are above the age of consent, this is the deck for you. Please play this deck, build it this way. Yeah, you're going to have a good time. All right, and get to Master 1. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. See you in the next video. Peace.